30 secondi e comincio.
Forse un attimino perché...
Sì. No. 30 secondi da quando te ne vai e comincio. Buonasera a tutti, bentrovati di nuovo qua in Aula Magna al Polo Carmignani per il congresso dell'Unione Matematica Italiana per una conferenza speciale. Sono felicissimo, non mi pare vero, devo confessare, di essere qui a introdurre Edoardo Sáenz, è là adesso? Edoardo Sáenz de Cabezón y Rigaray. Gli ho già chiesto altre volte cosa servono tutti questi cognomi, ma sono spagnoli e magari ce lo spiega dopo in spagnolo. Io l'ho conosciuto su internet, nella sua lingua madre, presentare matematica. Io mi detesto per non saper parlare spagnolo, però capisco quello che lui racconta e soprattutto è strepitoso vedere il trasporto con cui parla di matematica in una lingua che io non capisco. Lo so, è una lingua latina, dovrei riuscire a immaginare, ma parla tra l'altro in un modo che è affascinante. Basta ascoltare il suono e capire che è bellissimo. E adesso mi dovete perdonare, la sua conferenza sarà in inglese, lo vedete, lui capisce perfettamente quello che sto dicendo, non è fluente in italiano, and so I switched to English to introduce him more formally. I am delighted to be here to introduce Edoardo Sáenz de Cabezón y Rigaray. And I'll repeat, yes, he's asking. Roberto Natalini, who with me invited Edoardo, considered invited Edoardo for the special session, is saying that I should say what I thought of his introductory talks to mathematics, and more than just introductory. In his original language, they were beautiful. I enjoyed them so much. And well, I better tell you some of his characteristics because he is a theologian. He's actually also a mathematician. He's also an academic. He works at the Universidad de La Joa in Logroño in Spain, and he is an active researcher in algebra, in computer algebra. Is a TV presenter. I'm so envious. And he has a program on a major TV channel in Spain, of course, speaking about mathematics and science, and he has thousands of followers on YouTube. How? Millions. Millions is thousands. Millions is thousands. Yeah, I was thinking how many. And these followers are there listening to his way of presenting mathematics. We are here with the special session, with the special lecture because we are running a special lab on how to reach the broad public with mathematics. We had a very interesting meeting during the day today, and if you're interested in communicating mathematics to the public, then consider coming tomorrow morning again here for the next session. If you're not interested, well, consider coming anyway, because it's a very important part of our subject. And now I stop talking and I leave the microphone to Eduardo. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and sorry, because I would prefer to speak Spanish, but my Spanish is too fast, so you probably wouldn't understand. My Italian is terrible, so you wouldn't understand anything. And my English is not very good, but it's good enough, I would say, to speak out of what I need to speak today. So I think we have 1 hour and a half. Here's my clock. I think in Italy it's something called the quarto d'ora docente or something like that. Is it? Academico. I will not use it. So I will just start now. And if anyone has any questions, come on. Come on, welcome. Bienvenuti. If someone has any questions or any comments or anything, just interrupt. I don't mind. I may answer or not, depending if I know the answer or not. But it will be interesting. So it's more interesting if we can interchange things. This is intended to be practical in some sense. So I will probably avoid the screen and use the blackboard. I rather prefer this. I'm old, so I prefer rather these things. So this is the title. Everyone can read that. Can you read this? There's free, like in church, there's free seats on the first rows. So how to speak about mathematics to a broad audience. Like in any mathematical talk, we need to explain the title. So that's the first thing we do. So how? How to speak to mathematics? Well, what I will speak today is one way to speak about mathematics. It's not the way to speak about mathematics. My way has been, in some sense, successful. We should define what success is here in this sense, but it's very difficult to define that. So So I will speak about one way to speak about mathematics. There's many ways, probably better ways than mine or alternative ways than mine. But I will try to focus on what I have thought about how to speak mathematics, because I had the chance, I was lucky enough to speak about mathematics to very broad audiences, like you said, millions. So since we are mathematicians, we like to find patterns and structures and how to do things, and we like to understand things. So I gave a lot of thought about what works, what doesn't, what mistakes I made, what things I did right. So yeah, I will share with you some of the experience, and you can ask whatever. I know everything, so you can ask whatever you like. So how? This is one way to speak. Speak, okay, about mathematics. What do we understand by mathematics? Not in a philosophical sense. I mean, when we want to speak about mathematics to someone else, is this a broad audience? The mathematics I would speak to you is the same mathematics I would speak in school. Is the same level, is the same content, is the same feeling that I have towards mathematics. So these are some questions that should be addressed by people that would like to speak about mathematics. Mathematics is so big and wide, and that we somehow have to focus on a piece of it or parts of it. What is a broad audience? What is a broad audience? Depends on the number, depends on what, if they like mathematics or not, depends on if they know mathematics or not. Is this a broad audience? Is going to a square out in the city and do some mathematical games, is that a broad audience? Or these people, so knowing your audience is one of the main things when you speak to someone. So knowing the audience is one of the main things. I will tell a little story about this. I was asked in my university many years ago, to speak about my PhD thesis. So in my university, there is a science day or something like that every year. And they asked one individual from each faculty to give a short talk about his or her PhD thesis. So the new doctors are called for that. So when I became a doctor and when I did my PhD thesis, I was asked to do this years ago. So I received the call or email, I don't remember, I think it was a call. And they said, you should speak about your PhD thesis to a general audience in 20 minutes. And I said, I can do 2. I can speak to a general audience about my thesis. That won't be 20 minutes. Well, my thesis is COSUL homology, combinatorial COSUL homology, applications and computations, just to define COSUL homology. I needed months. So I cannot. Is that mathematics? It is mathematics. Is the mathematics adequate to a broad audience? I know. But so I can speak about my thesis to a general audience. It won't be 20 minutes. Or I can speak about my thesis in 20 minutes. That won't be to a broad audience, to a general audience. Or I can speak to a general audience in 20 minutes. That won't be my PhD thesis. And I did the third one. So because the restrictions were those, time and people. So I decided to change the topic, and I spoke about how is it to do a PhD in computer algebra. And I avoided the COSUL homology and things. So this is about the type. One thing I do every morning every morning when I wake up, I do my exercise. How is the hello to the sun? How is this in the yoga people who does this? It's hello to the sun, something like that. Saludo al sol. Saludo al sol. I do saludo al sol. And I repeat myself a mantra that I live with every day, because this is, for me, this is what summarizes my work on science communication. And this is, I'll try to write it in English, and I say it afterwards in Spanish, okay? So, on top of the hierarchy, I don't know how to write this, probably I'm wrong here, is the content. I mean, the science, the math. So that's top of the hierarchy. Science, math. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm talking about. So this is top of the hierarchy. I cannot avoid speaking of that. Okay, I cannot make things too simple or wrong, so simple that they are wrong. So this is top of the hierarchy. But at the center of focus is the audience. Is the audience. En lo alto de la jerarquía está el contenido, en el centro del foco está el público, la audiencia, ¿sí? So this is so important. This is so important for me. I can make an analogy. I come from La Rioja. I know La Rioja is impossible to say for Italians, Americans, for anyone, except for Spaniards probably. La Rioja. I live in La Rioja. It's a wine region. It's one of the wine regions in Spain. So imagine I invite some of you, one of you, to La Rioja, and I take them to a very good restaurant where there's very good wine. I know the sommelier, is the word? I know the sommelier, so I ask for a very special wine for the first course, and another special wine for starters, and another one. So say Pino comes to La Rioja, and we go to this restaurant. He dressed well, as he always does. I try to dress well as well, and we go to the restaurant. Everything's beautiful. I ordered this wine. I test it, and then I get Pino's glass, and I start pouring wine from the bottle. And I pour the whole bottle into his glass. Of course, the wine spreads on the table, on his jacket, trousers. He hates me, he hates wine, he hates La Rioja. He doesn't want to know about me, never again. We do that a lot. We do that a lot because we know mathematics. We know a lot of mathematics. Mathematics is beautiful. Like this one is so good. Mathematics is beautiful. We love it. And we love to share as much mathematics as possible with our people. We love it. What we do is we forget in front of us there is a glass. And it's very easily filled up. And we don't care. We just pour more and more wine, and people get sick of mathematics. Because we just give them too much. And it's not our problem, because we know a lot. We know a lot of mathematics. It's not mathematics' problem, because mathematics is beautiful. It's beautiful, it's enjoyable, we're passionate about that. Hello? We're passionate about that, but the problem is our focus is not on the audience. So first of all, the focus is not on us, it's not on me. Focus is not on mathematics, focus is on the audience. Even if at the top of the hierarchy is the content, is the math. Is the difference clear? Because that's subtle, it's obvious difference. I mean, I will just say obvious things here. It's obvious difference, but it's so important. And we forget it so often. We forget it. So that's a common problem for scientists. We do that a lot. But it's not entirely our fault, because we know a lot and our subject is beautiful. And we love to share it. But we need to be aware that we should know the audience and know how much they need, how much they want, how much. So if I pour the exact amount of wine into Pino's glass and he drinks it and he likes it, he will ask for more. I can wait. And that's better if someone asks for more. That's my goal. So this is, sorry about this, that I'm going to say now. This is our goal as teachers also. So my goal as teacher, as a professor or whatever at university is that my students is like interrupted sex. When the other part says, "Oh, don't leave me like that. I want more." So I want that with my metaphorically with my students. I want that. I want them to ask me for more. That's my goal. And if I give them everything at the once, I ruin it. I ruin the whole experience. And it's not my fault. It's not that mathematics is not beautiful. It is beautiful. It's not that I don't know enough. I know enough. It's just that I don't care about them. So this is a subtle difference, but it's very useful. And it's something, after the saludo al sol, I repeat this to myself. En lo alto de la jerarquía está el contenido, en el centro del foco está el público. So I preach every morning. So that's one point. So now, what is our goal? And this is a very general situation. We have a content, say math, content. Content is it the word? I mean, content is a contenido. It's not happy. It's content or contenido. Okay. I don't know if it's the same thing. I don't know. And we have the audience. And we want to join them. We want them to meet and probably have a good relationship. That's what we want. That's all we want. That's our main goal, probably. And this applies to many different situations. Like, for instance, we have a new mathematical result, and we want the referees to be happy with it. And our paper get accepted in a journal. That's something we want. And it's of course, on top of the hierarchy is the content. So if my math is wrong, I will not get published, of course. But also, I need to convince the referees. And I need to tell things in a good way. Sometimes we fail in that. Also, this applies to a lecture, to a classroom, and also to speaking mathematics to a broad audience. So how we do this? My proposal here, my one way to speak about mathematics, my proposal here is 3 layers of 3 layers. 3 layers. First layer is content. Second layer is narrative. And third layer is resources. So the narrative is serving the content. The narrative is designed so that the content is clear and it's accessible and it's important to the people. And the resources are serving the narrative. So if I make a joke, if I make the use I do of time or voice or space or graphics or whatever, or examples are so that the narrative works. And the narrative is in service of the content. So that's my proposal. That's my proposal. So first thing I do, the first step I do is to work on content, on the math, or the science. That's the main thing. Before starting, the first point I need to do before starting here is ask me 3 things. One is to learn the math. If I don't know the math well, I can spoil it, I can ruin it. So I need to study. I probably need to know much more than what I will tell in the end, much more. Because questions might arise or different ways to tell the same thing are possible if I know mathematics. If I don't know mathematics, then I will be always like pretending and probably it will not work. Other thing is to know my audience. This may seem obvious, but we forget that a lot of times. We forget that. What are the interests of my audience? What do they like? What do they hate? What do they love? What do they fear? And maybe I can connect with them. So this is study. And if we are speaking of broad audiences, where can we learn how people are? Reading literature, probably. Going to the cinema, watching television. But most of all, reading. Poets and writers know about people and we can learn from them. This is something I tell a lot to my PhD students. Read a lot, read literature. It's very important to know the audience. And the third thing that is behind there is why. Why am I doing this? This is something we should ask ourselves all the time. Why am I doing this? Sometimes I hear, oh, because I love it, I like it. Okay, some people love to kill cats. And is it nice for the cats? No, not really. So I don't care if you like mathematics. Honestly, I don't care. This is not enough reason. It's not enough. So you leave me alone with your mathematics or whatever you like. You like it, okay, you read mathematical books, but leave me alone. So why, the reason that I like it is, honestly, I think it's not enough. We need a deeper why. And also we need a for what. What am I doing this for? The answer to why is probably inside of each of us. And the answer to for what is probably outside of us. But the thing we should ask ourselves these questions constantly. Why am I doing this? Why am I running a YouTube channel? Why am I doing a conference in the Science Week? Why? Why am I involved in that? And what I intend when I do these things. Okay, so let's do 1, 2, and 3. Let's go into this. 1, the content. This will be a mess in content. To prepare the content, I suggest at least 3 steps. 1 is select. The other is structure. And the third is walk. Selección, estructura, recorrido. That's how I say in Spanish. So selección, select. Assume I am speaking to an audience about Pythagorean theorem, for instance, or Fibonacci sequence, since we are in Pisa. The Fibonacci sequence, okay. First of all, who is my audience? First of all, because my audience can be 8-year-old children, then I can explain the numbers and the rabbits and all this kind of stuff that we can use with the Fibonacci sequence. If my audience is mathematicians, okay, I can speak about the Fibonacci polynomials, roots of Fibonacci polynomials, how are they related to Lucas numbers, these kind of things. There's a lot of content about the Fibonacci sequence, but There's even a Fibonacci quarterly. There's even a journal about Fibonacci sequence, which is still going on. So first thing is select. And select implies knowing my audience. Knowing my audience, and select in terms or in related to my audience. That's the first thing. What I usually do here is I write lots of sentences in a way that is not, how to say this in English? It's not the same thing to say, I want to speak about the Fibonacci sequence and then prepare a talk. It's better, in my opinion, it's better, so in the proposal I'm doing here, it is better to say, what do I want my audience to know after my talk about the Fibonacci sequence? It's similar, but it's not quite the same. Because in the first way of asking, focus is on me or in the content. I will make a talk about the Fibonacci sequence. Okay. And the second way of asking focuses on the audience. And what do I want? So I want them to go, assume I'm speaking about the Fibonacci sequence to a school of 8-year-old children. They will speak at dinner with their parents. What do I want them to answer when the parents ask, what did you do today? Oh, I went to a talk. What was the talk about? The Fibonacci sequence. What did you learn? That is my question. That is my question. And that's how I will prepare the talk. So what do I want them to answer to this, to their parents? That's the selection. That's the selection of content. Second step I used to do is structure the content. So there's main ideas and there's secondary ideas and there's subsidiary ideas or concepts and this kind of stuff. So I normally write like a tree, like a scheme, a tree with the ideas and secondary ones, etc. And I do something else. On the arrows between the, I do this for real in my notebook. On the arrows, I write cualificativos. What is this arrow about? Is this, so this primary idea and this secondary idea, what is the relation they have? Is this a cause? Is this a consequence? It is an example? It is an explanation? It is further information? I need to know what the arrow means. It's not just an arrow. And of course, the same content can have different structures, but I choose one. I just choose one, but I want to, this is to get acquainted, to get familiar with the content. This is working the content, I'm not yet here in the narrative. I'm still in the content. So this is the second step I do when regarding the content. And the third, And the third is to walk this structure. Probably these three can be walked in different ways. So I try different ways. Maybe I've already chosen one, but still I try different ways to run or to walk the same content, to get familiar with it and also to discover better ways. I will now put an example of this, if I'm able to, I hope so. This one. Is it clear? It's in Spanish, sorry, but this is, assume I want to speak about the solar system to 8-year-old children. So what I've written there is, shall I read it in Spanish? Is it okay? If not, just raise your hand and, hello. So, number one is, el sistema solar está formado por una estrella con 8 planetas alrededor, ¿sí? Vale. La estrella se llama Sol, número 2. 3. Los 8 planetas se dividen en 2 grupos. Sí. 3A. 4 de los planetas son rocosos y se llaman Mercurio, Venus, Tierra, Marte. ¿Ve? Otros 4 planetas son gaseosos, gas balls, y sus nombres son Júpiter, Saturno, Urano, Neptuno. Y 3C, estos 2 grupos de planetas están separados por un cinturón de asteroides, asteroid belt. ¿Sí? Understood. Is this okay? So this is my selection about my selection of content about the solar system for 8-year-old children. This is my structure. I have written this tree. Now I can walk it. Let's do at least four different walks. Okay. One is the deductive. That's what we mathematicians do most of the time. So from general principles to examples. So this is top to down in this tree. That's one way to walk. I just done this. Another is the inductive way. So from examples to general principles. We also like that in mathematics most of the time. So I could say hay un cinturón de asteroides que separa 8 planetas, 4 de ellos son rocosos, Marte, Venus, 4 de ellos son gaseosos, Júpiter, la estrella en torno a la que giran se llama Sol y todo junto forma el sistema solar. From the particular to the general thing. But I could do something else. I could start my walking on this tree like the most mysterious place in the solar system is the asteroid belt. And this asteroid belt divides 2 different kinds of planets. There are some giant planets which are made of gas, which are Jupiter, Saturn, and there's some rocky planets, smaller like Marte, Venus, Earth, etc. And they all are circling around the sun, whatever. Or I could start by the Earth. We live in a very special planet. It's the only planet that has life. And it has a family. And its family is 4 rocky planets that have some cousins, the gas planets, very big cousins, very big gas planets. And we all circle around the sun, which has been the god for many civilizations in our planet. And we all form the solar system. I don't know. There's different ways to walk the same structure. This structure is one, could be another one. Could be another one. I mean, there's no one structure for every topic, but it's just one. And I can walk it in very different ways. So I haven't yet started to prepare the talk in terms of the narrative. What I've just done, and this takes a lot, at least in my case, this takes a lot of time and effort, is to get familiar with the content in as many different ways as possible. Because knowing your content in different ways makes you familiar with this. Let's take a mathematical example. In how many ways could you talk about vector spaces, matrices, vectors? In how many ways? In how many ways could you approach that topic? In many ways. And for me, it's very useful, and I found it useful and sometimes saved my life to, well, not really my life, I mean the talk. It saved my talk to have done this work in advance, to walk my content in different ways and in different orders and makes different approaches, etc., etc., etc. So this is part of the methodology that I used to use. So this is part 1, content. Part 2, the narrative. How do I speak about this? Here, there are many narratives that can be used, many narrative structures. I'm a very big fan of structures. So there's very many different structures, narrative structures to talk about the topic. The one I use most is folk tales, the cuentos populares, the folk tales, the story, the structure of folk tales. For me, that's one of the main heritage we have from our ancestors. This is so useful, has worked so well for centuries, for millennia, that we should learn from them, from those people who were telling stories orally before forms of this, in form of folk tales. You people, for instance, have the immense luck of having Italo Calvino taken these popular stories, the Italian folk stories. Italo Calvino made this huge book, which is fantastic. I love that one. And the structure is very present. The structure is this. This is the structure of almost any folk tale, almost any film that you can watch now in the movies, any TV series, etc. So what is this? This is a status quo. Status quo. So we are in a situation, and then something happens. There's an incident. Something happens. Let's call this incident. And we dwell into the incident with the complications there until we reach, say, a bottom point. When, okay, bottom point. I don't know if this can be said like that, but we reach a bottom point, then we start recovering until we get to a new status quo, where this problem has been solved and we have evolved. There is a secondary school teacher who teaches chemistry, and he finds out he has cancer, and he doesn't have the money for the treatment and so on. So he was happy with his family, his work. Well, not really happy, but he had his work. He was a teacher, and he finds out he has cancer. And he cannot afford the treatment, and he will make a debt for his family. So he tries to find out, and starts some activities, alternative activities to find money. Things, blue things, and there's a point in which he is the boss. You remember? And you know what I'm talking about. Most of you know what I'm talking about. There is a bottom point in this TV show, which is, I am the one who knocks. I am the danger. So this is where this Walter White says, I am the danger. I am the one who knocks. So he starts building his empire so that he is now able to raise the money for his family, and his family can live again. There is an old lady, a grandma, who lives in the forest by her own. She's autosuficiente, we say in Spanish. She's autosuficiente. She lives in the forest, and she lives alone. And close to the forest live her daughter and her granddaughter, who happens to dress always in red. But everything is nice and happy. One day, grandma is sick. She's ill, and she can no longer be autosuficiente. So someone has to take food for her. Okay, so the little girl goes to the forest and finds someone, and this someone tells her there is a shorter way, but it's a lie, and she believes in people, in wolves, and there's a bottom point in which I could say it in Spanish and you will follow me. Like, abuelita, abuelita, ¿qué ojos más grandes tienes? See? So this is the bottom point, where he's about to eat her. And then we recover until, depending on the versions, we recover the status quo except for the wolf. So you see, this is a universal structure. This structure has been used. It's not the only structure. It's not the only one. There's other circular structures. There's symmetric structures, like the Bible, for instance, has lots of them. But it's a very, 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 very universal structure. Also, there is a book called La Narración Fractal, in which the author uses the analogy of fractals to say, okay, some stories appear here or here. Think of Breaking Bad. There's small cycles there, circles here. Or think on the 1001 Nights. There are nested stories in one another. That's beautiful. This is something I recommend to everyone. The 1001 Nights is one of the magna opera of humanity. So this structure, I use it a lot. And this can be used as to speak about science. So there is a situation, say the introduction of some of your papers. What is known about the topic? Then suddenly we discover something is not known, or there is a generalization of the topic. So we start lemma, proposition 1, proposition 2, until we reach the main theorem of the paper, then the corollaries, examples, and so on, and we reach a new status quo. And we can tell this as a story. Looks like a bit naive to speak so, but we're doing that. And it is good to, I don't know, let's stop a little bit, because every one of you writes papers, right? I mean, scientific papers or mathematical papers. When you read that, what do? It's not the same to read a paper when you are writing another one, when you were just looking at the literature, than when you are a referee. It's a different way of reading, very different way. At least for myself, this is, I hope I'm not refereeing any of yours paper. I hope not. No, I'm sure I'm not. But when I am a referee, I don't read the introduction. I don't do it. I leave the introduction for the end. I don't read the introduction. I just go to the main sections and see if they stand by themselves without knowing the introduction. If they stand and the theorems are well structured and the main results take me to one other point, I say, okay, now I'll read the introduction and see if it matches. And then, okay, of course, I check everything is correct and so on. But when I'm reading a paper for my own research, then the first thing I do is reading the introduction to see if it's interesting for my problem. I trust the math is correct. That's for the referees. That's for the journal. I trust the math is correct. Maybe sometimes I need to go through the proofs because some techniques are useful for mine, or there's some insight in the proofs, or the proofs are constructive and so on. But you see, the same paper is read in different structures when you're depending on your role. So that's what the audience is about, also for mathematical papers, also for scientific papers. So for talks, it's much more important. So this is the narrative structure, and that is devoted to the content structure. So if my content has difficult points or important points, then I put them here, here, or here. Okay? So that's how the narrative structure is in service of the content. If I know this is difficult, okay, then I make this the incident. Now the incidents draw attention, and now we'll speak about resources now. But is it understood how the narrative structure is in service of the content structure? And to me, at least in my, say, methodology, this is a very important point. And this is, and it's also important that it is after the content. First, I am familiar with the content. Then I can really know what narrative structure I can use, if I will use a circular one, etc. So that's the second thing. And the third are resources. Resources depend a lot on the media that we are using. If we are on video, or if we are in a talk, or we are in a paper, or whatever. The resources depend on this. For instance, in a paper, if I know there is a difficult point, I use an example. So I illustrate this difficult point with an example, because this resource is not narrative, is not content. Maybe we could write papers without examples. Old papers are written without examples. Say old papers are 3 pages long or 2 pages long, or there's I don't know, Hawthorne thesis is 16 pages, something like that. Now we don't. We use examples a lot to illustrate this. If I'm in a talk, like with my audience, general audience talk, when do I use a pause? When I want to draw attention. Why? Because there comes an important point or a difficult point or something that I want to insist on, something like that. When do I use a joke? When I want to stress something particularly important, particularly difficult. When do I use repetition? When something is important or particularly difficult. And repetition is also something that can be learned from the fairy tales or from folk tales. Do you know the story of the 3 little pigs? This is also known here. So imagine you're telling this story to children. How do you do that? I've told this story to many children across my life. I'll do it in Spanish. It's more, for me, it's easier. So the wolf goes to the first house, the straw house, I don't know. And he says, soplaré, soplaré y la casita derribaré. Yeah, is it? So I'll blow, and I will get the house down. Soplaré, soplaré, la casita derribaré. So something happens, the pigs run and they go to the second house, the wood house. Then comes the wolf, and the wolf says, soplaré, soplaré, y la casita derribaré. And then the pigs run and go to the third house, and the wolf says, soplaré, soplaré, because I said exactly the same words. Otherwise, it doesn't work. To the children, if you were children, you were shouting, soplaré, soplaré, and children shout, and they got involved. And that's one resource, to get people involved. And it is very important that I use exactly the same words. If I say, soplaré, soplaré, la casita derribaré, and second one, he says, y ahora voy a soplar y esa casa la voy a tirar abajo. And the third one, and children say, what? I know. They're not involved. So this is obvious. I mean, this is nothing new. I'm not discovering anything new here. But it's paying attention to what does work. And this does work. And it's been working for ages, from centuries ago, millennia ago. And it does work. And we should learn from the old storytellers that how to do our work well. We are communicators. Since we are teachers or we are scientists, we communicate. And we should learn how to communicate. And who could we learn better than from the old storytellers? They're so efficient, so good, and it worked very well. Okay, so this is resources, time, space, and these resources are to be put at the important places in this narrative structure. So the resources are to serve the narrative structure. Narrative structure is to serve the content structure. Okay, that's a methodology. That's one of my methodologies of work. Pretty late. So, next thing about I think I have time for the second chapter. Yes. We want to put these two boxes together, the content on the audience. So someone has to move. Either we move the content towards the audience, or we move the audience towards the content. What I mean with this. First move. To move the content towards the audience. So the audience stays. What is the audience? The interest my audience already has. For instance, the news or popular culture. Depends on the audience, of course, of popular culture, or the big topics of humanity like love, death, life, what is death, what is love. These things interest everyone. That's all the TV shows and movies, etc., either speak of love, friendship, death, or life, or origin of life. All this interest we already have. So what does my content has to do with that? Is there any relation? Can I expand it a bit so that I touch somehow my audience interests? That is moving the content to the audience. So I will show an example now. I will play a video now, and let me see if I can do this. Yeah. I will play a video. This is a 3-minute talk. It's a talk about biology. So I want you to, it's in English, sorry, and it's an Irish guy speaking English, so it's difficult. But I hope you can, I've seen it many times, so I know it, and I will comment afterwards. But it would be great if you could pick it. So it's a biology talk. It's about a frog. So I want you to say afterwards, I will be asking, what is the scientific content of this talk? What is this talk about? What is he teaching us? And how does he move his content to reach the audience? This is a technique that I call, I don't know, anyone calls, in Spanish, pregunta significativa. So this is significant question. It might be a question or it might be something else, but I call it like that. Pregunta significativa. So let's try to identify what is the pregunta significativa in this video. Are you ready? Are you ready? Am I ready? Is the computer ready? minutes.
How clear is the line between life and death? Everyone here has something in common, a beating heart which keeps us alive. If your heart stopped beating, that would be cardiac arrest, leading to death. But what if you didn't need a beating heart to be alive? To answer this question, we must go on a journey, all the way to the forests of northern Canada. Now, this isn't a story of fantasy or a fairy tale. It does, however, involve a frog, the wood frog. And each winter, the wood frog blurs the line between life and death. Unlike us, frogs are cold-blooded. Their body temperature closely follows the temperature of their environment. Now, seeing as the wood frog lives in such a cold environment, this presents a problem. But the wood frog has evolved a solution to live with the cold. Like Bear Grylls, the wood frog is tough. But unlike Bear Grylls, it's tough in real life. As the temperature drops below zero, the frog begins to freeze. First its legs freeze, then its head and chest, until finally its heart freezes. No heartbeat, no pulse. It's in cardiac arrest. And it stays in this death-like state for weeks. But during these weeks, the frogs are just like ice cubes. If you drop them on the ground, they clink around. In fact, they're so cold, they don't even respond to a kiss from a princess. But during the spring, something incredible happens. The frog begins to thaw out. Its heart starts to beat again. Its lungs start to breathe again, until finally they're hopping around. But how can the wood frog cheat death like this? And why can't we survive freezing and thawing? Well, when the cells in our body freeze, they dehydrate. Water leaves the cell and freezes in the area around the cell. But with no water left on the inside anymore, the cells collapse, split, and die. But the wood frog is different. It has an inbuilt safety mechanism. As its cells begin to freeze, some water leaves, but it is replaced with glucose, which is a simple sugar that the frog makes as it freezes. This glucose combines with the remaining water inside the cell, keeping the inside unfrozen. So while all around the cell is frozen, the inside is protected in its natural sugary antifreeze. So clearly the wood frog won't be giving up sugar for Lent. Then, when the frog thaws out, water re-enters the cell, the glucose leaves, and the cells resume their function. And this freeze-thaw adaptation allows the wood frog to survive, not by avoiding the cold, but by embracing it. And it challenges our understanding of what it means to be alive, a beating heart. And that is how the wood frog is blurring the line between life and death. Not by freezing to death, but freezing to live. Thank you.
Okay, this is a masterpiece. This is a masterpiece. What is the content? What is this about? How? What? How the frog survives the cold. So it is a intracellular mechanism that substitutes water with glucose, and therefore the frog doesn't freeze and it survives cold, the winter. So it actually freezes, but the cells don't freeze, and so that's how the frog survives. So I don't know. I was there. I was there that day. That was the final in 2013, and this is the guy who won. And I was there. The audience, that was in Cheltenham, which is a town in England. These towns where very old people go to have these baths, balneario. This is one of these cities. So the average age in the audience was 200, 250, very old people. I don't know how many of them are genuinely interested in intracellular mechanisms of frogs. I guess not many of them. But he starts otherwise. So he could have started, I will talk about an amazing mechanism some frogs have inside their cells. And people go, okay, come on. That's it. But he started, imagine 400 people, average age 250, and he starts how clear is the line between life and death? What if we don't need a beating heart? Well, Quarteroni wouldn't be happy. But what if we didn't need a beating heart? So to answer this question, we will go on a journey to Canada, where there is a frog that every year blurs the line between life and death. Come on, give me more. Now I want to know. Now that's a masterpiece. So was it in his content? Well, the content is about antifreeze mechanism intracellular. So he expands it until he touches something my audience already is interested in, is what is the difference between life and death? We are all interested in that. There's lots of movies about that, lots. And we want to beat death. There's lots of stories about beating death. So everyone wants to beat death. In particular, very old people want to beat death. And so he expands his content in order to touch this, and now he starts. And that's the significant question. How clear is the line between life and death? I will put a second example. It's also in English, but this woman is from Cyprus, so we understand her better. Again, content, and how does she touch the interest my audience already has?
How deep do you think the love of a mother for her child is? You see, we all have something in common. Once we were all embryos living peacefully inside our mother's belly in an excellent bed and breakfast environment without any distractions until our birth. But for scientists, this peaceful life inside our mother's belly has been one of the most fascinating mysteries in biology. This might sound strange, but surviving all 9 months inside the mother's body should theoretically be impossible. And in fact, in biology textbooks, this is called the pregnancy paradox. You see, this is because mothers, like all humans, are naturally designed to fight off anything foreign that enters the body, bacteria, viruses, even organ transplants. And this is due to a complex but elegant protection mechanism we all have called the immune system. Now, your immune system knows you better than your best friend. In fact, it knows you better than anyone else in the world. It knows every single cell in your body, so it can realize when something foreign comes in and attack. Imagine your immune system as the police force, where specific cells act as a military intelligence, traveling everywhere in your body, looking out for possible intruders. And if they find them, then they send a report to another department, where soldiers called the killer cells destroy those invaders. Now think of this. As an embryo in your mother's body, you were only 50% like her. Your other 50% belonged to a total stranger to her immune system, just some random guy. Oh well, your dad. So being 50% like your dad in someone's body means the chances of surviving pregnancy should have been 0. Yet we're all here. Believe it or not, scientists have been struggling with this paradox for the past 50 years. Some argued that maybe the embryo finds a way to hide from the mom's immune system. I said that the placenta provides a physical barrier between mother and baby. We might not have a full answer yet, but a few years ago, scientists found something amazing. The mother's immune system does see the baby. The military intelligence identifies the growing embryo and informs the killer cells of the intruder. But the mother's killer cells, instead of destroying the embryo, they themselves commit suicide and die. So in the particular area in the belly where baby and mother meet and shake hands, the mother destroys her own immune system for the sake of her growing baby. And this is taking the love of a mother for her child to a whole new molecular level. And that's how deep the love of a mother for her child is. Thank you.
This video went through a Windows computer, a Mac computer, now Linux computer, so it's a bit okay. It's not okay, but you could hear, you could understand. There was some delay, but you could understand everything. So what is the content? The scientific content, what is it? Yeah, why does the immunitary system of the mother doesn't kill the baby? That's the pregnancy paradox. So there's a pregnancy paradox. We should all be killed inside our mothers, but we don't. We are all here. So there's an explanation, and this explanation has to do with apoptosis, called. No? So the immune system commits suicide, so the child survives. So this is, again, we could start the talk like, I will be talking about the pregnancy paradox. So, but no, he says, how deep is the love of a mother for the child? So this is not as, say, spectacular as the one before, but again, it closes a bit the gap from the beginning between content and audience by moving the content. So the audience did not grow any new interests. We are using the interests our audience already have, like death in the first case, love of mothers in the second case, etc. So we don't move them. The other movement is the opposite, like moving my audience towards my content. Then, I'm sorry, I give an example I made myself. This is done normally by stories. I was in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, some years ago, and I was speaking about this. So you all know the story, but I will repeat it. I started telling the story of the death of Évariste Galois. So I start with this story. So this Évariste Galois is a teenager, basically a teenager. He's a 19-year-old, and he has an appointment for a duel the day after. So, and he's sure he will die because his opponent is a guard, is a professional military man. So most likely he will die. So what do you do if you're 19-year-old, 20-year-old, and you know you're dying tomorrow? Basically, you say goodbye. So he wrote many letters saying goodbye to family and friends and so on. And also he wrote a lot the mathematics he had in his brain. This mathematics he had presented before, but no one paid any attention to this. But he wrote to Chevalier, I think. It's a letter to Chevalier, and he said, "Okay, this is the math I have inside." Show them to Jordan, to Gauss, and so he did. So, and he died. He died the day after. So 20-year-old, this guy, this Évariste Galois, this teenager. Imagine people 20-year-old today. So this guy dies, and 200 years later, every mathematician at his 20s, we need to know about Galois theory, about what this guy invented when he was in my university. It was the only subject which has a proper name. The others were algebra 1, algebra 2, but there was a matter was Galois theory. So I tell this story to people a bit more beautifully than now, and ask, so what was that this guy wrote the night before his death, at his 20 years old, that 200 years after we all have to study to become mathematicians? What did he write? So now, and when everywhere I tell the story, people say, so what did he do? So this, I moved the audience. I generated a new interest. My audience, when they came through the door, they didn't have any interest on Galois, group theory, or any kind of that. But then I raised this interest, and I am here to answer you. So this is another technique. This is moving the audience towards the content. So generate a new, genuine interest, and you're here to answer it. So these two movements combined, normally, is what we use to put together content and audience. And I think I give you now a voice so that we can speak and we can have a little conversation. If not, I will say later, maybe 2-minute words about humor. And humor in science communication humor is here. Is one of the resources, and it's an important one. But you don't need to be funny to use humor, so that's safe. But otherwise, is anyone want to comment something or tell about his or her experience or doubts or whatever? I think this is a methodology I use normally to teach or learn. When I'm working, when I'm actually writing videos for my YouTube channel or talks, sometimes I use this methodology, sometimes I don't. But running through the methodology, for me, it's important to be aware of all the points that are used when you're preparing a talk, even if you don't follow them one by one. But once in life at least, one should go through all of them just to be aware of all the important points that, in my opinion, are needed to speak about mathematics to a broad audience. So it's your time. It's your turn to ask anything or comment or share some experience or doubts or some things you've done well or wrong. Yeah. Do we have another mic or I go?
Nice to meet you. Okay, no problem. I think the best is to speak English. Okay? At the very beginning, you quote us content and audience. And it was wonderful to look at you, at your image of to pour wine in a glass. Mm-hmm. And you have too much wine with respect to the glass. But my problem is, okay, you are speaking about the audience as one audience, the average audience. The problem for me is when I am in the classroom and I have different students and they've got different classes. And I have to select the content in the average, maybe. Some of them would like to have more wine. Some of them, I hate this lesson. So that's, for me, this is a big part of the problem. In this morning, there was a section led by Roberto Natalini, Laboratorio di Comunicazione. You were there at the very beginning. And they were talking about mathematics and internet. That's part of the problem. For me, there is also the problem of at which audience do you aim? A medium or a very low level? And for me, this is a very important step that you have to select before. It's like when you write a paper, okay, you aim at a good referee, but you don't know which kind of referee you will have in the end. And so my idea is that try to speak the more clear, in the clearest way you can.
Okay.
During a conference, and then use also these tricks, good tricks, in order to reach the audience.
That is a very, very relevant comment or a question, comment, I don't know. And yes, it's something I didn't say, and it's good that you pointed it because I want to say something about this. So yeah, normally the audience is heterogeneous, as you say. It's different. It's different levels. Levels understood as you like. I mean, not necessarily levels of knowledge. I don't know, but different levels, different kinds of people. So you mentioned a lecture room or a classroom. I also teach in the university. I've taught during 10 years in high school. So yeah, I know that people are. But imagine the internet. So you do a video on YouTube. Who's going to watch that? So what I try to do, and sometimes I succeed in this, is to prepare so that you can give a little piece to everyone, or at least to everyone, at least to some groups, some different groups. For this, I will give you an example. Sorry, again, it's an example that I prepared so that I know it well. I give a talk on big numbers. So there is a talk I give on big numbers. It's called like that, big numbers. What is a big number? One that you will take a long time to write by hand, say. So this is a talk about big numbers. I started talk with a big number contest, and I bring people to the stage, and there's a big number contest, so write the biggest number you can in 10 seconds. And people write sometimes crazy things. There was once someone wrote a big 9, like that was the biggest number, a big, very big 9. One day I learned one very important thing, and this is for free for you. If you call volunteers when you're giving a talk, never, ever call the teacher. Never, never. I was in university giving this talk. I made this contest, and one of the volunteers was the teacher. And he was a math teacher. He wrote 1 to the power of 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. This is 1. Come on. So that's the biggest number. So he was. So I don't want to ruin the teacher's authority in front of their class. So I never again call the teacher to be. So that's for free. That's extra. So I start with this. Then I start speaking about Archimedes and the sand recorder. You know, this book where Archimedes basically invented the exponential notation in a somewhat different way. And we go all the way to non-primitive recursion, computability, Turing machines, and non-computable numbers. We go all the way in the same talk. The first part of the talk is boring for some people. Well, boring. It could be boring for some people, but I try to make it funny. Some people know everything in the first part, everything. So I try to amuse them, and for the other ones, I try to tell them things that they don't know. Maybe they don't know about Archimedes and this sound recorder. Maybe they don't know about exponentials or recursion. There's many people who knows that. So this part, I try to make it as funny as possible for the people that already know this. Then it goes step by step. And there's a point in which some people who didn't know anything about this before, they cannot go again through Ackermann functions and non-primitive recursion and so on. But they've gone all the way through here. So they already have some benefit from the talk. And then I start speaking to the people who already know, because I know I'm speaking. But I try to take people from the hand, trying to say, if you're afraid, just hold someone else's hand, something like that. I make jokes so that people don't feel themselves like stupid. That's one of the things I want to avoid. So I very carefully plan to address to a heterogeneous audience, and I try to give something to everyone, and also taking into account their feelings. So I know that in the first part, people who knows everything need to be amused somehow. Otherwise, they will get bored and they will go. And in the last part, I don't want people to get frightened or to have anxiety or things like that. So I do give the content. I do give it this non-primitive recursion and non-computable numbers and Turing machines and all these, but try to make it soft for people who are overwhelmed by this, but also give new stuff for the more advanced piece of audience. So that was prepared in a very detailed way. It's not always the case, but I try to do that, for instance, in my YouTube channel. Because I know there's people, very, very different people, who want to see this channel because they are amused by this, and so there's millions of views of this channel, and people are very different. There is one thing in this, sorry that I speak too much. This saying by Einstein, I think, that if you cannot tell something to your grandmother, then don't know the thing. That is wrong. First, Einstein never said that. That's false, as many things people say Einstein said. Second, I know very well many things I couldn't tell my grandmother, and I know them very well. Well, both my grandmothers are dead, so that's not possible. But even if they were alive. And third, that assumes grandmas are stupid or what? So that's something we don't want to people feel like. So first, you can know many things that you cannot tell people, so you need to adapt. That is and adapt in different ways. And second, and finally, I think the most important is you should always avoid people feeling stupid when they hear you. That's something we should always avoid, because we are all ignorant on some respects, and I think taking into account this knowledge of the audience includes knowing the feelings of the audience, and I think that's very important. So looking arrogant, I think that's very bad. I'm now feeling myself as arrogant, but this is because I'm speaking in English, and everything in English sounds worse. But yeah, but that was a very important question, I think, and we should address that question always. And I think there are ways to address that, and one is this: try to interplay with content, feelings, and the resources. And the resources are to maintain people involved when they don't know what you're speaking about, but they still like it, or when they know a lot about what you're speaking about, but they still like it. How to make that? And the resources are the important part. To end with, I was again in Argentina in the book fair, and came to me an old woman, relatively old woman, someone is in her 70s or late 70s, who said to me, "Oh, you are the mathematician guy. My son, he's an engineer." Of course, she lives with her. "And my son is an engineer, and he shows me your videos. I don't understand nothing, but I love it. I like it." So that's one thing we should also play with, that the way we tell things is also engaging in somehow. So there's different levels to adapt to the audience. It's doable. I think it is doable. It's possible. I don't know if I answered this.
Could you say something more about resources, and in particular about humor, please?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That was not prepared. Okay, something about humor. I think humor plays at least 3 roles. Why do we tell jokes in general, not in science communication, in general? Why do we tell jokes and use humor? For 3 reasons. One is to resolve conflict. So there are things that are difficult to speak about, and then we make jokes, like death, for instance, or other things. We made lots of jokes about the things that are difficult to talk about. So one of the roles of humor is to resolve conflicts. Some people say laughing is to show your teeth without being threatening. So yeah, it's a way to resolve conflicts. That's why, for instance, if you have friends or family that are doctors, or they make lots of jokes about death and diseases and so on, because they live in constant conflict and they need to resolve it. That's one thing. Second is to join the group. We make jokes to join the group. So if I make a joke about Italy here, you will find me as part of you. And if I go to a high school, I make some jokes about the things that students are into, and they think, oh, this is part of us. So it's a second reason that why we use humor is to join the group, to make community. And that's why we make private jokes. For instance, with our partner, with your husband or girlfriend, we have private jokes that it's good to have, because they make us together. So, and then same with groups. And the third one is to break solemnity, solemn things. Is this a word in English? Solemnidad? So when things become too serious. So we break that. And there's lots of jokes about that. In fact, it is the first intellectual humor we have as human beings, as babies. This breaking the solemnidad. When we are very little, our only humor is physical. It's like hide and seek, or when someone falls, or things like that. There's not intellectual. That survives all our age. But when we are very little, we don't know about life, anything, but we know that there is something that must be done away from the others, and it even has a special place, which is the toilet. There's some things that you don't do in front of anyone, and there's like a solemn thing. And then when there's jokes, and my grandpa or my father makes jokes about farts or pee or caca or shit, that's funny for the children. And that's the first intellectual humor we have, because it breaks the solemnity. It's intellectual in the sense that needs thought. It's not visual. It's something that needs thought or be aware of the situation. So these three roles of humor, breaking conflict or overcoming conflict, making a community, and breaking solemnity, are very useful in science. Because when I go to the group of students, I want them to feel me like part of their community. I don't want them to see them apart from them, solemn, like here is the big scientist or mathematician, someone who will show respect or something like that. And some people have a conflict in the relation with mathematics or science and so on. So humor is very useful in this respect, and you don't need to be funny for that. You don't need to be funny. You just need to be clever enough. I mean, we are all clever enough to this. See the two examples I put here, the videos. There were very, very few jokes. Some of them worked, some didn't. I will give you like 3 of the examples. One made by this woman here, Mirtani. She said, well, when you're in a baby in your mother's belly, you have like a random guy, your dad. But that's a breaking solemnity. She's speaking about something very serious, and your dad, whatever. And we all make fun of that, because it's like treating something important or solemn like something like a joke. The other guy, Fergus, he made one joke that worked, that didn't work for you, but worked in England 10 years ago. It was a joke about Bear Grylls. He said, this frog is tough like Bear Grylls, but unlike Bear Grylls, she's tough in real life. Bear Grylls was a guy who had a TV show called The Survivor or something like that. It was all fake, and everyone knew it was fake. So when he made this joke, everyone knew what he was speaking about. It was a TV show, very famous TV show. Everyone knew it was fake, and everyone made fun of this TV show. So when he mentioned this, people laughed. Why? Because they recognized the joke. Say, I'm part of the group. You didn't. Because this show is no longer, so the youngest people, they don't know Bear Grylls, so that doesn't work. Depends on the audience. And then he made another joke that didn't work. And this is also important for how to use this resource. He said, the frog puts sugar inside the cell, something like that, so it wouldn't have sugar for Lent. So when your neighbor comes and asks for sugar, and nobody laughed. That was a joke, intended to be a joke, didn't work. And instead of stopping there, he just threw the joke. If someone gets it, someone gets it. Otherwise, that's what I call to enter a joke with your 2 feet. So if you enter just with 1 foot and it doesn't work, you fall. And it's bad for you, because you lose your esteem or your confidence. But if you just walk through the joke like, yeah, this works, blah, 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 blah. You say a joke, someone gets it, some don't. Maybe nobody gets it or nobody laughs at it. Okay, you go on, but you use it. So for me, humor is important in the sense that it can be used. You don't need to be funny. Neither of these 2 guys are funny by themselves, but they use a little bit of humor. And also it has this role, like breaking conflict, making a community, and breaking the solemnity. So in particular, in science communication, I think humor has a very respectable role and can be used. Again, you shouldn't force it. Nothing is less funny than someone pretending to be funny. But you don't need to be funny. We don't need to be funny. Just the jokes that work better are the ones that are intended for making community. So the shared code, so to say, those work most of the time, and they will connect you with the audience at an easy price. That's very easy.
I think we have to stop here, and this has been wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Ci vediamo tutti qui domani mattina alle 8:50 per la continuazione del laboratorio.